in Lincoln, affordable rates, and top-notch service, Fast Mike's Roll-Offs make cleanup quick and easy. Call now at 402-450-6828 or visit us online at fastmikesrolloffs.com. Book your dumpster today. Fast Mike's Roll-Offs, cleanup made simple.
You're listening to Walk the Herd on 93.7 The Ticket, when unheard issues get brought to light and every perspective counts. Here is your host, Rebecca Pearson.
All right. Here we are, Sunday night, 7 o'clock, Lincoln, Nebraska. I am back in the studio. It feels great, Jake, to be back here.
Yeah, welcome back.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, it's fun to stream in, but I like seeing the traffic. I was bragging on the station today to somebody I met who has radio and TV in Chicago, and they were super impressed. So love to brag about the station. I am Rebecca Pearson. If you haven't joined Walk the Herd before, we are here where the unheard get heard and every perspective counts. This is a relatively new show, and I'm happy to have Aniko back with me tonight. So, hey, Aniko, how's it going?
It's going great. It's good to be back.
Yeah, I know. I'm looking forward to the conversation tonight. You know, you and I always have these great conversations, and we haven't scripted any of it. So I'm looking forward to some new reveals this evening.
Me too.
I was going to say something I was going to say, but I've already forgotten what it was. Anyway, Walk the Herd. We are at 402-464-5685. If you are listening, or if you listen to this on recording, make sure you drop in a chat, a question. If you're listening live, you can call or text in. This is the standard for us here at 93.7 The Ticket. If you're on YouTube, you can see us with the Sartor Heyman video stream. We're on channel 961 with Allo, and we're on X and Facebook. So there's a lot going on for digital coverage. I hate to say it. Did the Eagles lose today, Aniko? I think they did, right?
I thought we won.
Oh, did you? Okay. Well, my neighbor was watching it, and they were getting kicked. So I'm glad if they won, because the poor Commanders did not.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we won. I did fall asleep at the end. So
okay, all right. Well, count on you. I just heard from my neighbor, so maybe Jake will check it. So we're giving proper information here. But I do know, because I turned on the radio driving in tonight, and just when the Cowboys were taking a knee to seal it 44-22. So not good for us people from Washington, D.C. However, I hope that we have a great experience this coming week, because it wasn't a great weekend for the Huskers either. So sports were not doing so good with people who wear reddish jerseys.
You guys came to Maryland and tore us up. So you guys made the local papers about what a great impression you all made and how the Huskers fans showed up and showed out. They had not seen anything like it before. And in DC, we don't even really talk to each other when we pass each other. So to be part of the conversation is a pretty big achievement as well.
Yeah, no, that's true. You know, and I did hear, as we often do, right, how great the Husker fans are in general, and Minnesota too, as far as welcoming the opposing team. So it's although we don't like being beaten by Minnesota, it's a decent experience if you go. And we went a couple of years ago. However, yes, so you pick yourself up and you get back on, and you live to fight the next game. So we're looking forward to this weekend with Northwestern coming into town, and here we go. So tonight's topic on Walk the Herd, which is where we explore different perspectives that challenge beliefs and open our minds, hopefully. And it could be sports, business, or life. It doesn't really matter. So you and I kind of collaborated on this a few weeks back, and we're just getting a chance to talk about it. But tonight's about words. So I think you had done some research, Aniko, and a few weeks ago we had talked about diminishers and multipliers. Last week we were talking about unconscious bias. You know, a lot of these things, they're all sort of intertwined. And tonight I'd love to see if we can kind of get alternative perspectives, even if we have to hypothesize what they are, see if we can get alternative perspectives to what we're going to talk about tonight. So as one of my colleagues at ExxonMobil used to say, words mean stuff. So I love to do the introduction for this show that words mean stuff. But you had also done a little research on this and had come up with the concept of kindness around this. Do you want to elaborate on what you were thinking when you read this?
Yes. So I was thinking, language is alive. So that means it changes and grows as we do. And the interesting thing about these words, a lot of them we just use out of habit. It's not out of intention of harm. It's not, malice. It's just been passed down. So I think this conversation will be great to not to cancel words, but to essentially broaden our vocabulary about kindness and how words can and do affect people.
Yes, and I think that's a great perspective. And I want to add to that it also can be a lot about awareness. Because as you'll see, we've picked out a few to talk about tonight because, I'm gonna talk about my own personal experience, which I can speak to very comfortably, even though it's not necessarily uncomfortable. So back to having uncomfortable conversations from a month ago when we'd had Maisha here, I'm going to try to share those just because what I'm saying, I believe other people might be thinking, but it is also about awareness. And particularly when we talk about some of the words that we found today that have some origins that many people probably don't even know. And you might say, well, why does it matter? Who cares, right? If a word used to mean something and now it doesn't, right? Even a little bit about our conversation on Plantation Drive, our very first show, was a little bit about that. So I would like to add awareness to kindness because a lot of it is around intent and acknowledging certain meanings, right?
Yep. Change doesn't happen if change doesn't happen. So.
And one thing we can always count on is change.
Absolutely.
The world's changing. Okay. Well, I'm going to kick us off then. So if you are just tuning in to Walk the Herd, we are talking about different perspectives on words. And Aniko, you get all the credit for doing a little research to tee up this topic, but I'm going to get us started. So the first word I'm going to introduce to the conversation, and by the way, some of the links for the research that we as in Aniko, located, we will drop in the YouTube. And I hope we're doing that. I don't know if Jake did that for us a few weeks ago. I've been meaning to go back. So we'll make sure that we drop these in the YouTube for you if you want to go read about them. So the first one I wanted to start with was spirit animal. And this one has a little bit of history, but I suppose a lot of people today will be able to relate to that. I feel like the use of spirit animal often comes into play even in sports. Don't you think, Aniko?
I do, especially with mascots that have also changed and not changed. Essentially, you deal with cultural appropriation, which is a bigger culture, kind of taking away from a lesser known or minority culture. And by doing so, it takes away meaning, sacred practices, things like that.
Right. And, I didn't know most of these, so I will freely admit I didn't know the origin, nor would I expect most people to know the origin unless they happen to relate to one of these cultures that we're going to talk about tonight. But I'd be interested if people actually know the origins of these words. I'll be fascinated because then I'm just going to show how not in tune I am. But spirit animal, I think you might be able to guess this one if you were guessing, seems to stem from indigenous peoples. And so the phrase does refer to spirits as guides. And generally, these can be very sacred for an indigenous population. And I go back to, okay, why does it matter where this came from? And I can give my perspective, but maybe you want to give in your 2 cents, Aniko?
Sure. You want to go first and I'll counter?
Oh, sure. Okay. Yeah. And we can always play both sides of the perspective, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think, it goes back to a little bit to me for awareness. And this is where, if you're an indigenous person, you may or may not have a real strong feeling whether this bothers you or not. And we could talk about sports all day long with the Cleveland Indians or the Redskins, these names. You find divides even in the Native American population when it comes to the use of words like that. So it's not that any one of these is bad, good, or whatever, but understanding that perspective would help me if for some reason I was using that word in front of someone who had an indigenous native background in any country, frankly. And so for me, a lot of times if I say something, and I'm going to share something with you that I said yesterday, and I had to, stop in my tracks because I was actually talking about something like this, and I was like, oh, okay, is that, does that bother you? Is that offensive to you? And, having that uncomfortable conversation with someone, if you say something like that in front of someone, and just being aware what someone's background actually is, and a lot of times we don't know. We're not sitting there talking to people and wondering what background they come from. What's your experience?
I do find that people are thinking that, because I often get asked the question of, what are you? Which is always fascinating. So perhaps it's just maybe in good effort to understand and relate and have topic, but it does catch me off guard. But I myself, even there is a large indigenous population in DC, Maryland, and Virginia. And I have friends who don't like Native American. They like First Nations or the tribe specific to them, Choctaw or whatever it may be.
Right.
So it, like you said, it's about awareness, and you can't reach anyone with anything you're saying if there's a giant wall in between the two of you. And it's not just our job to walk in other shoes, but what do we do with that after the fact? Do we change it, or do we just continue staying a little closed-minded? I think the world's a lot kinder and a lot more enjoyable when we do consider each other.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think from my perspective, I'm always curious. And sometimes that's a little bit too much questioning, but I'm always curious. So, and that's just great perspective, because I have the, majority skin color in this country. And so my perspective, I'm not always sitting there looking what other people look like, but if they look different from me, that I might. Whereas you have grown up with a very unique background, and I'm guessing have a lot more of that. And so how do you feel when someone says, "What are you?" How would you like them to ask about your background? Right?
I can usually always tell what the intent is. That's what drives a lot of my reaction. If it's genuine curiosity and then, followed by, "You're beautiful. I love that. Thank you for asking." But if it's more of a, "What are you?" then I'm more apt to be like, "What are you?" To have that back. And it's not just, being the majority, you don't think about it, but being the majority, you've had history in the palm of your hand. So you've been the one historically to be able to write history, read history, interpret. So it's that power dynamic again that comes into play with appropriation or just conversation sometimes.
Right. And for me, I'm just curious about people. And that I think that's one of the things as you learn these words, right? We hopefully are teasing some curiosity out of the people that are listening to our show here to maybe ask questions. And it goes back to uncomfortable conversations. We can keep bringing that in, because while I may not want to ask, because sometimes I feel like, oh, I should know, whether something is offensive or might be offensive, or that I might need to know someone's background. But I like to ask questions. Sometimes I do that with someone's name when I feel like it's, something other than John Smith. I ask, okay, what country is your name from? What's the origin of your name? A lot of times that leads into an interesting conversation. In today's world, we have 23andMe and Ancestry and all these wonderful things that will show in most cases, we're all kind of from a lot of different places. So we all have a mix in the first place.
Definitely. And I've heard, via TikTok that Americans are really the only ones that use DNA tests and things to claim a heritage or identify. But I think that's what happens in a mixing pot, and a good melting pot is it's hard to pick the ingredients and figure out. But I think, like you said, curiosity is the best way to put it. No guilt, no shame, just curiosity.
Just curiosity. And if somebody is offended, then don't judge that. Try to understand why and be sensitive to that.
Right.
And you can learn new words in the vocabulary. So I personally have never used spirit animal, but there are, I know from interview techniques, this is interesting from my career background, I I have heard interviewers ask somebody, if they were going to be an animal, what would they be? But a lot of times they say, what's your spirit animal, meaning, something similar, which I find interesting. When we were researching this, I was like, oh yeah, I've heard people say that on an interviewing technique. So these words, start as one thing and get used all over the place and they morph. And we're going to talk about quite a few words tonight that just morph into something way different than however they were originally intended.
Yeah. And I think, to be fair, you asked earlier what I would prefer someone say instead of what are you? And I genuinely don't have a suggestion because I'm so used to that being the question. I don't know that if they said, what's your background? I would probably in my brain go to, I've been a, health insurance navigator. I've been and go career wise. So I think, it's okay to admit that you don't know a better suggestion because they are so passed down,
Yeah. Right. Well, I think there's a lot of light-skinned people today, light-skinned mix from, Latin America with some kind of white American version of, whatever from a Protestant delivery across the pond or something like that. There's a lot of really wonderful mixed race children these days. So I don't know if someone would be offended, but I am always curious, and I might ask, you look like you're mixed race. Are you, what's your origin or what's your heritage? Now that might offend someone, but I think it's more and more interesting because usually that does lead to quite an interesting conversation if someone is mixed race of some sort, or two different heritage backgrounds. Usually does end up in a fun story about how the mother and the father met, or how they grew up or something.
I think the offense ties back to intent because you're almost wondering what the person asking intent is. Is this going to be used against me immediately after? Is this to understand? If so, maybe leading with your intention makes those conversations less intimidating because the tone is set.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I think that's a great idea, and then no one has to guess what the intent is, right? You're just telling them ahead of time. I think you mentioned that on a previous show, so I love that. That's going to be an Aniko nugget.
Yeah.
All right, excellent. All right, you ready for the next one? I'm going to fire off another one here.
Yes, let's go.
All right, paddy wagon.
That one is a tricky one. It can be referred to both, a police wagon in the times of the early Irishmen and also the Irishmen themselves, because so many are named Patrick. And it's just assuming that they are going to be drunk and have bad behavior and get arrested and put in said paddy wagon. So it crosses all types of cultures and borders and bounds, the miscommunication of said words.
Right. And I definitely grew up with the reference to that, and I wouldn't be able to dredge one up that was used when I was in my childhood, but I definitely know that one. And when you and I were sort of exchanging notes about tonight, some of the ones we talk about here have to do are generational, I think, or certainly maybe were used more in my generation than your generation, but I'm very curious to that. So have you heard paddy wagon used in your generation growing up?
I've heard it used by adults. So I think you're right. It is generational. And by having these conversations and bringing it up, it changes, which is the good part. But I also see paddy wagon used in commercial or restaurant settings, like a cute name for a sandwich, like Patty Melt, PADDY, in a pub or things like that, that you would think the latter of like, we would want to stay away from this. But it's used almost as like a marketing ploy to convince you of something's realness.
Right. And definitely Patrick and Patty is a nickname that I think is not offensive. Although if someone's listening to this, I have Irish background. So my maiden name is Kirkpatrick. So it doesn't get any more Scotch Irish than Kirkpatrick.
Yes, my white side is predominantly Irish as well. So
okay. Yes. But, Patty, I think, is a common short nickname for someone named Patrick, but then the whole context of how paddy wagons got a life. And then, of course, many of the Irish were Catholic, so you can throw in religion, you start getting a whole bunch of things. And again, I would be interested whether someone is questioning or offended by the use of paddy wagon. in current terms. But while doing my research, I found several articles where there were people that were offended by that. So, and I'm not going to mention those because we got lots of things to talk about, but it's not one I would have hypothetically assumed was bothering somebody. And yet it wasn't hard to find recent dialogue on this particular term.
And see, I would assume that it would, just because when sometimes discussing enslaved people or slavery, when speaking about African American or Black experiences, a lot of times you are not necessarily countered, but reminded that the Irish were also enslaved. So I would think in my brain that it would still be up on top, since that is such a popular not counter, but sentiment.
Right. Well, and Irish immigrants were definitely thought of as lesser than, back in the 19th century, right, in the 1800s. At least if you read history books or investigate, they were not the the top tier of immigrant coming in. So no doubt. And again, I'm speaking freely as my perspective, which is my perspective as I've grown up, right? So I love it when you have a different point of view, because that's the whole reason we have these conversations.
Exactly. It makes dinners very interesting.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Well, we never have any trouble talking, Aniko. So I'm gonna tee up another one we've definitely talked about, unrelated to this show, because I was so proud of myself, and then you kind of stuck a pin in my balloon, but that was fine. It was all right. And that's the use of the word articulate, particularly to someone Black or African American. And if you're not tuned into this one, this is very much a fallback for describing well-spoken Black people. And I was so proud of myself because I'm very sensitized to not saying somebody's well-spoken, in that super sensitized to this one for lots of reasons. I was all proud of myself. I was like, oh, articulate's great. And I do say articulate about young kids that impress me, in high school or something like that. But I remember telling you that and you're like, yeah, not so much.
Yeah, it's just my thought instantly. And I would assume others is, as opposed to what? Are you surprised? And what makes you so surprised that I would be? Because I am. I know myself as a person. I pride myself on speech, dictation, power in how I speak. So you're not wrong. But when it's proposed to you as a shock, that's when it kind of goes, what do you think of me otherwise, from other connotations,
Right. And for sure, from my perspective, I'm looking at talent. So when I say that, it's because I see a young person. I'm going to talk about a young person and not you specifically for the moment, but I might see someone in high school who I think is developed beyond their high school age in school. Now, again, the older we get, the less in touch we are with what high school, sophomores, for example, would be like. So I think there's certainly some of that just disconnection from that. But when I think of it, I'm always thinking of all the people that I know. This particular person that I might reference that way stands out to me as maybe being, more able to communicate. And that for me is an important one in today's world, where I don't think the education system is helping people to communicate well. Communication skills are what we do here at the radio station. So we definitely I notice it here. There's people we can put on air who can communicate and talk and carry a conversation, and there's people that can't. And that's not anything bad against them. It's just some people are better at doing that than others.
I would love to have someone tell me that I have fantastic communication skills, because that triggers in my brain the broad spectrum that is the field of communication, interpersonal, non-written, like that tells me I'm great in this specific field. But to touch on what you said about we get further away from high schoolers and, the youths, my brother who's 20 is not offended by that. He takes articulate as a compliment because he spent a year and a half at home during COVID, his freshman year of high school. So he did miss out on a lot of in-person speaking and using written communication. It was a lot of just video chats. So for him, he's like, oh my gosh, thank you so much.
I love it. Well, that's great. Thanks for sharing that perspective. So we have 3 different perspectives there, 3 different generations, sort of. Your brother's a little bit younger than you. So let's stop there. We'll take a break. So much fun. Loving this conversation. This is Aniko and Rebecca on Walk the Herd. We'll be back in a minute.
Harvest season is coming, and Acres has discounted many of our late model John Deere combines. Get thousands in discounts and upgrade for this year's harvest. Plus, you could save even more with interest rates starting as low as 1.9% on select units. Low interest rates combined with our huge discounts, there's not a better time to buy. Visit acres.com for all the details. That's AKRS.com. Restrictions apply. Offer ends August 31st, 2025. Subject to approved financing. Offer may change at any time without notice.
Hey fans, there's more winning at Amigos with the VIP Game Day giveaway. Every app scan is your chance to win premium tickets to a Nebraska football, basketball, and volleyball game, along with exclusive game day perks. And when Nebraska goes to a bowl, the winner also gets 2 tickets, lodging, and airfare to the bowl game. Weekly semifinalists will win free food for a year. Go Big Red. Eat at Amigos and enter to win.
Amigos is celebrating 45 years with exclusive Nebraska Legends collectible cups featuring Tom Osborne, John Cook, and some of your favorite Huskers. For every cup sold, 50 cents goes to teammates. Show your Big Red pride by getting all 4 of these collectible cups at Amigos.
This is Tom Osborne with the Teammates Mentoring Program. We have students on the waiting list for a mentor. We want you to join the team. Learn more about mentoring and support teammates by visiting Amigos.
An overdose can happen in front of you and you might not realize it. Blue lips, slowed breathing, pinpoint pupils, choking sounds, unresponsive to touch or sounds. These signs aren't always obvious, but they can be deadly. Knowing what to do could save your friend, your neighbor, your child. Learn more by visiting myhealthymind.crediblemmind.com so you can be ready before it happens. This message is funded in part by the CDC OD2A grant.
This is former Husker and NFL linebacker Jay Foreman. For years, I've suffered from degenerative problems in both of my ankles, but thanks to a thorough and thought-out plan provided by Advanced Medical Imaging, I was able to get my life back with the least amount of pain as possible. While working through multiple options, the team of physicians at Advanced Medical Imaging were there to answer any questions I had. If you're experiencing any pain at all and want to get your life back, go to amimaging.com or give them a call at 402-484-6677. Advanced Medical Imaging, located at 7601 Pioneers Boulevard.
At Parkview Animal Hospital in Lincoln, it's not just their professional care that sets them apart, but their warm staff and state-of-the-art facilities. Whether it's for a routine checkup or a comprehensive medical procedure, at Parkview, your pet isn't just another number, but a valued member of their caring family. Visit them at pahlincoln.com today and in person just south of 14th and Pine Lake Road. Parkview Animal Hospital, your pet, their passion for happier, healthier, furry friends.
Limitless Male says, it's all fun and games until your testosterone plummets. Testosterone levels can start falling as early as age 30 with symptoms like no energy, poor sleep, brain fog, belly fat, muscle loss, and mood swings. If this sounds familiar, get your testosterone checked at Limitless Male. We'll get you back in the game with more strength, energy, and confidence. When you feel this good, you'll wonder why you waited so long to get a free consult at Limitless Male. Get scheduled today.
I'm Karen Carr. I've been a realtor for 31 years. When I made a company change 12 years ago, I chose Lincoln First Realty, now NP Dodge. It's the oldest independently owned realty company in the country. Since becoming NP Dodge, we've continued our tradition of community involvement. Our management and staff are always available to offer support in marketing, technology, social media, and educational opportunities.
Expand your career with NP Dodge. Call Eric at 402-434-2222.
Are you looking to upgrade or improve the garage door on your home? This is Cameron Hall of Doors Plus. At Doors Plus, we guarantee to offer a wide selection of options from 5 leading garage door manufacturers as we deliver a free estimate, exact measurements, and rapid installation with a 3 to 5 week time frame. When you choose Doors Plus for your residential garage door needs, you'll work with our experienced technicians and be ensured that your new door seamlessly complements your home. Give us a call at 402-590-5800 or visit us online at DoorsPlusLLC.com. Doors Plus, garage doors, and more.
What's better than supporting your favorite radio station and eating delicious Nebraska-made products? Smoking Gun Jerky of Nebraska wants to highlight you,
the listener on the 93.7 The Ticket Wall of Fame at the store. Stop by the store at 48th and R in Lincoln and see their huge variety of small batch gourmet jerky. Or if you're not in the area and want to try some, go to smokinggunjerky.com and enter code EARLY for 10% off your purchase. It's the ultimate low-calorie, high-protein snack at Smoking Gun Jerky of Nebraska.
With UBT, you've got total control over your money. Like Doug, who runs his game day tailgate like a well-oiled machine.
I got burgers, brats, chicken, dogs, plus all the fixins. And with the UBT Go app, I can track my food spending from anywhere.
Pro move.
They don't call me Grill Sergeant for nothing.
No matter your goals, UBT helps you feel good about reaching them. Union Bank and Trust. Member FDIC.
You're listening to Walk the Herd on 93.7 The Ticket. Here is your host, Rebecca Pearson.
All right, this is Walk the Herd. Welcome back. If you've been listening to us, this is 93.7 The Ticket in Lincoln, Nebraska, but you can get us anywhere on YouTube, X, Facebook, Allo if you're local, Channel 961, YouTube. You can see us on YouTube and the Sartor Heyman video stream, and you can call or text 402-464-5685. So we are having an awesome conversation, and Aniko and I are now going to maybe tackle here in segment 2 a couple of maybe potentially very controversial words. So that was the warm-up. So if you missed the first segment, go back and listen to it. We're talking about words today. Words mean stuff. And we were talking about spirit animal and its roots and paddy wagons and what else? Oh, and being articulate. Yes. I certainly have experience with those. And we ended on talking about generational differences. So what a great segue. Aniko, I'm going to let you tee up this one. I would love it if you would explain a little bit about the word woke.
Yes. This is my bread and butter because it's definitely not used correctly, but that's kind of what happens, like we said, with cultural appropriation. It loses meaning, it loses significance. So woke is actually shortened for awoken or awaken. And where it really started was in the 1980s in a Spike Lee film, School Days. And in the last scene, the actor's yelling, wake up, wake up. And he's telling, specifically college age African-American and Black people to be awake to societal injustices, to racial discrimination, to the differences being had at that time. You're in the war on drugs where, predominantly Black and African-American communities were affected by crack cocaine instead of cocaine. And those sentences and punishments were a lot higher than the luxury drug cocaine. There's a lot going on there. Even on Childish Gambino's album, I think it's called Awaken My Love, there's the song Redbone where he keeps repeating, stay woke. And he's saying, like, you need to be awake and not asleep to the issues and injustices that are going on. And it's interesting because instead of being the correct way to use it, I'll say would to be like, I took this minority studies class and now I'm woke to the hidden injustices that I had no idea, were happening. And I'm going to dedicate myself to not using these terms instead of a derogatory term or something used to kind of poke fun at someone who has an altering view than yours. But like I said, that's kind of what happens with cultural appropriation. You lose the meaning.
Yeah, thanks for the quick lesson for anybody who isn't super familiar with the term woke. That might be a suggestion that you aren't woke. But if you're not, it's okay. That's why we have the show here to talk about these things, but certainly to give a little bit of history. And a lot of people may or may not know who Spike Lee is. Certainly a incredibly well-respected producer of films, especially ones that get you to stop and think.
And for sports, the crazy guy on the floor seats of the Knicks games.
Absolutely. If you don't know Spike Lee for anything else, he's the guy on the sidelines of the Knicks games. But Spike Lee, talk about an incredible human. When he was first getting started, he was doing incredible work on super low budget and it was taking off like wildfire. He hit the movement at the right time. Like many people, he was a change maker. Such an interesting person, making such a big difference, and perseverance. Right? I think when I think of Spike Lee, I think of perseverance.
Definitely, and not to rip off FUBU's, tagline, but it was for us, by us. So
Yes.
There was nothing catered to the audience that the messaging wasn't directed to. Starting films with loud, impactful music that some, were breaking records and CDs at the time. Like it was, I wrote a dissertation on Do the Right Thing because even at 18, I was like, whoa, somebody's saying all the things. So
Right. And gave Spike gave such voice to, I'm going to call it Black culture, which is an understatement in many ways, but to put a wrapper around it just so we can have a conversation, he gave such voice to that. And it was so good, people couldn't ignore it. And that makes me think about what I've heard from you and your dad even, and from other folks that are very close to me, that Black people feel like they have to work, 5 times as hard, 10 times as hard to get noticed and recognized. I would say gender-wise, we used to say that also if we were in a male environment, but certainly, if you're Black in this country, I have heard that so many times.
Yeah.
Spike is so incredible.
It's not even a feeling, it's a proven thing. If you look at rates and statistics, I was in public health and I've seen those numbers. I've experienced reading budgets where, I think we talked about this on another episode, where I see someone in the same position as me making significantly more. And you kind of have to go, we're still having too many firsts. This is the first Black or African-American person to do this. This is the first. Why are there so many firsts if we're all caught up?
Right. No, exactly. And certainly I could say in corporate America, right, the Black people, right, that fit in, right? And this conversation is loaded just because there's so much there to talk about. But if you were fighting in corporate America, you had just the need to overperform. And then again, you would get that guy's very articulate, right? And we were doing like staffing conversations, and it's everywhere if you've ever been around it. So I want to ask you something. What do you hear, anybody that's not Black? I'm going to start with that. I was going to say white, but let's say anybody not Black who doesn't understand woke. What do they say in the context in which you have teed it up? What do they say, or what do you hear?
I don't want to be too nose on the head, but the woke left, or, woke Democrats, or woke this, and it's like I said, like a derogatory term or like an insult.
Right.
And it's typically about, the insinuation is that they think they know everything, or they think they know something new, but they're being indoctrinated. And it's like that sentiment in itself is an indoctrination to fear of losing your culture, when if we loop it back to kindness and understanding, if we're really done and over and past racism, then let's be done and over with it and take a second to be kind and considerate, Google things, ask questions, lead with intent, and then we can actually stand on these issues aren't an issue anymore.
Yeah, to me, there's so much fear and lack of understanding and then feeling out of the loop that goes behind someone's negative, derogatory reaction to woke. Go ahead.
Inherently, again, you could even argue that there's not malice if there's not understanding. Like if they genuinely don't know what the word means or where it comes from, and they're not using it correctly, and they're just repeating what's being passed down, whether it's, political channels or in friend groups, like, of course you want to relate to the people around you. But is that all people or some,
Yeah. And I think when we think of sort of the negative statements we hear about woke, it is people that have the fear, or even the introduction of a new word from a minority culture. Right now, I'm just gonna, we're just hitting the nail on the head tonight, because that's what we do.
Indeed.
It's a new word, and it didn't come from your culture or your privilege or your group or anything. I mean, it could just be two groups when a new word gets introduced. And, if you're not liberal and you associate it with liberal, I'm just going to associate it with being a conscious human, but you do have a lot of people that associate it with being liberal, because there's a lot of social awareness that goes with that, but it isn't. It has nothing to do with being liberal and everything to do with understanding differences across people, across cultures, across geographies, the difference. And I do feel that people are afraid. They don't want to admit they don't really know it. I would just throw out a guess, because none of us would have any data on this. I don't think, half the people that poo-poo it or, speak of it poorly don't really understand what it is. It's I have lots of thoughts about it. I would love to have someone on the show, right, who was open to saying, yeah, either I didn't know what it was and here's how I used to behave, or someone who's still going through that journey to wrap their brain around it and not think, have a negative thought about it.
Yeah, and I know that I don't have to offer this information, but I'm registered as an independent voter because I'm always open to new information, because how can you form an opinion without all the pieces to make a valid choice? There's good and bad in both, just like there's good and bad in connotations of every word. But if we don't pick and point what those are, we're kind of just talking in circles and never understanding each other.
Right. Well, hopefully that you did a great primer on it. So hopefully for those listening, that will educate or help somebody be curious to go do a lot more Googling and reading on it, because there's loads of information on it.
And even that, is subjective. Your AI answer is catered to your beliefs and typical things you Google. So you also have to be mindful that AI is still learning. So you can't take those summaries as fact. So.
No, and for this show, I try to research both perspectives. I try to throw in mine if I feel like it's different, because this show is all about sharing perspective. We're not trying to convince anybody of any side of anything. We are sharing perspectives, and in that sense, no one's right and no one's wrong.
Yep. Different isn't wrong.
It's just a different point of view. So I'd like to, before we take our next break, I would like to throw out something that at the retreat, a woman referred me to a book that I had never heard of. I was telling her that we were going to have this show eventually, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, have you ever read this book called Word Slut?" And I loved it already, because I was like, okay, you got me with Word Slut, what kind of book is that? And she's from New York, and she's felt like it would really appeal to me. And I got hooked right away. I haven't even read the book yet, but I went and listened to a podcast. And I'll tell you what, and I'm going to try not to be she's articulate person, but she's 33 years old now, and she wrote the book. I believe she was in her late 20s. Her name is Amanda Montell. Darn, this is one sharp cookie. Okay, whatever words we want to use, this is a sharp cookie for that age. And this is where I have, okay, why am I saying that? Incredible communication skills, incredible understanding of her topic, references to data, both sides of the conversation, no opinion, right? Super objective about what she was delivering. I was incredibly impressed. Even her co-host, she was on a podcast. I was impressed with both of them. So shout out to them for achievement. But this book, and she's from Baltimore.
We love it. Baltimore doesn't consider themselves part of the DMV. So respectfully, we love them, but don't worry, we're not looping you in.
Okay. She's at least sort of, DMV adjacent, right? So, and for anybody who doesn't know what the DMV is, not the Department of Motor Vehicles. This is DC, Maryland, and Virginia for me and Aniko and anybody else that refers to the DMV. But she is a linguist. She went to NYU, and also a reporter. She's written 4 books now. She has a New York Times bestseller. The woman's 33. Okay, I'm just saying. And she wrote this book. It is, it's from a feminist perspective, and with the use of the word slut, which I wanted to talk about. I think, it starts to already pique your interest. But there were kind of 2 references that I thought were interesting. And maybe we take a break here just before I introduce those. We'll come back and we'll have a few minutes to talk about this book from Amanda Montell. This is 937 Walk the Herd. We'll be right back.
At Valentino's, we're on a mission for tradition. On every slice, for every bite. Golden baked crust, cooked to perfection every time. Savory sweet sauce that's made from our own secret recipe. Loaded with the perfect amount of fresh toppings and melty mozzarella cheese. It's the tradition that Nebraskans have come to love. From game day to every day. Valentino's. Taste the tradition.
Give your furnace a break with the help of Heartland of Nebraska Windows. Heartland of Nebraska Windows offers a free estimate, full window replacements, all vinyl triple pane windows, and a lifetime warranty of everything, while still keeping their prices affordable. Sounds too good to be true, right? Heartland of Nebraska Windows is locally and family owned with their own team of installers. Give the window experts at Heartland of Nebraska Windows a call today at 402-430-3852 or visit them online at heartlandofnebraskawindows.com. Elevate your home or business with the help of Heartland of Nebraska Windows today.
A1 Automotive's second location is now open at 5110 State Hill Drive, just off of Yankee Hill Road. The new location continues to specialize in all makes and models and provides personalized service as they have for 15 years. With the school year here, A1 Automotive reminds you that college students get 10% off any service, and they offer free tire repair with a valid college ID. Schedule your appointment today at a1autolincoln.com and visit their new location in South Lincoln at 5110 State Hill Drive or downtown at 11th and L.
Have you been injured in an accident and don't know where to turn? You need an attorney you can trust to handle your case with professionalism and compassion. The attorneys at Liberty Law Group understand that a call to an attorney is a call for help. If you've been injured, we want to help you. Liberty Law's experienced attorneys are committed to the pursuit of justice for those injured. Call Liberty Law and find out how we can help you get the compensation you deserve. Call 877-42-LIBERTY. Call the trial attorneys you can trust. 877-42-LIBERTY.
Schweizo Construction is now hiring for skilled craftsmen, steel erectors, concrete workers, and general laborers. Schweizo Construction offers great benefits like premium wages, health and dental insurance, paid holidays and vacation, 401k with company match, life insurance, and disability insurance. They pride themselves on a legacy of 40 years built on integrity and trust. Joining their team means becoming part of a family that values hard work, dedication, and mutual respect. Apply today at schweizo.com. That's schwisow.com.
Since 1983, Fast Mike's Roll-Offs have been a trusted and reliable company in Lincoln and the surrounding areas. Fast Mike's handles all sides of construction projects, home renovations, or big cleanouts. With the perfect size dumpster to fit your needs, Fast Mike's Roll-Offs will haul it all. With same-day delivery in Lincoln, affordable rates, and top-notch service, Fast Mike's Roll-Offs make cleanup quick and easy. Call now at 402-450-6828 or visit us online at fastmikesrolloffs.com. Book your dumpster today. Fast Mike's Roll-Offs, cleanup made simple.
You're listening to Walk the Herd on 93.7 The Ticket. Here is your host, Rebecca Pearson.
All right, welcome back to Walk the Herd. This is 93.7 The Ticket. We are talking about words tonight. I'm Rebecca Pearson. Aniko Renee is with me tonight. Having a ball talking about words because words mean stuff. Okay, so right before the break, we were talking about Amanda Montell, who wrote a book called Word Slut, A Feminist Guide to Taking Back the English Language. And hopefully we have talked about something tonight that has piqued your interest, because that is our goal. And we really want to share perspectives. And I think we've talked a lot about words tonight and origins and the fact that it really matters about intent, context, and then hopefully getting you a little more comfortable to maybe have some uncomfortable conversations that don't really need to be uncomfortable, but they're all awkward because we don't do them very often. So right before the break, we talked about woke and introduced this book called Word Slut, A Feminist Guide to Taking Back the English Language. So as you might imagine, among many other words in this book where Amanda is talking about the origin and what they mean, the word slut was interesting to me. And so interestingly enough, and this I think really highlights to me, Aniko, what you've been pointing out is the change in use of words over time. and how words might have started as derogatory. They turn out not to be derogatory later on. They're used really commonly, but there might still be someone out there who takes offense or doesn't look at it as favorably. And I think that's really one of the key things we're giving a perspective on is how words can change. So this is one of them, because back in the 1600s, according to Amanda, that word was used to mean a untidy or dirty woman. Now, it was referring to a woman, right? Because this book is about words referring to women in general, but it meant with somebody with messy clothes or poor housekeeping. It had nothing to do with sexual behavior. And then later in the 1700s and 1800s, it started to really refer to someone who was more morally careless, I guess. And then come our generation and the 20th century, it is very much, I think still, although I'd be interested in your perspective because I'm older than you, referring to a sexually promiscuous woman. And it is derogatory, at least it was when I was growing up. So what's your perspective on this?
It's interesting because I know we keep touching on it, but intention, if I hear that word from someone your age, I absolutely know that that's what they mean. But there's a lot of women my age and younger, starting with Amber Rose. She used to be married to the rapper Wiz Khalifa, who took the word back, which is what happens a lot of times with derogatory terms. By taking it back, you take the power back. And a lot of us refer to each other, if you have, good news, insert bleep word that would have been used wrong against women to each other even. She hosts a annual slut walk every year to raise money for different women's issues. So it's kind of evolving now still. But again, somebody your age says it to me on the street, I'm like, big oof, wait a minute. But but somebody my age or younger, I understand it could absolutely be empowered. And there's usually a deflection in the speech and tone of like, hey girl.
Right.
Right.
No, and I've heard it that way too. And I think, well, that's, I have to do the mental stop in my tracks to know that it's actually kind of a term of endearment or friendliness. And, these folks who have a big stage, celebrities, artists, whatever, have a big stage to reframe something, have a great role in society. And I really appreciate that because it's interesting as I get old and watch words change over time. It's fascinating how a culture can change. And if we start to borrow words from each other, it is part of creating a true melting pot of acceptance when we're borrowing from different cultures, right? I think that's the thing this country has really suffered from is so much separation of cultures, as in one is better than the other. The more we mix it up with words and marriages and kids and all this kind of stuff, then it helps acceptance. Do you agree with that?
Partially, yes. I absolutely think the divisiveness is our Achilles heel for sure. But I think it gets tricky in terms of saying we should just mix all cultures and let everyone use everything, because there are some things that should remain sacred or at least asked about. There are some understandings that need to be had. Like you need to show a basic respect of said culture before you can borrow, quote unquote. And you need to acknowledge said culture when borrowing, if it's on a public stage, like you're saying. Otherwise, you cross that line right over into appropriation. So it's a double-edged sword. You want the connection and you want the community, but respect is what's in community, not power, if that makes sense.
Yes. And I think, excellent point as always, because you have great communication skills, Aniko, to give another perspective and to keep us all sort of aware. And if you're not sure, ask. Is this word offensive? Is this word something I can use? Is this not appropriate for whatever reason? And I've certainly asked those questions over the years. So I'm going to take us out with one that very much is that way. And please jump in on this one, because I certainly am not an expert on any of these things. I'm talking from research that I do for the show and my personal experience. But this is one that Amanda called out in her podcast about the word queer. And queen, which, depending on where you come from, might mean something different. But queen, the Queen of England, back, if you're going far enough back, it was the Queen of England, and nobody gay was ever referred to as a queen. And that I saw that going from sort of derogatory in my generation to now, again, sort of in a term of endearment, and then queer, kind of the same thing. And she says all of this, and I don't disagree based on my experience, what I've seen. But what's your view on those words? And I'm going to let you take us out here as we close out.
Okay. May I ask what the author looks like before I answer?
Oh, well, I can only tell you what I think she looks like. She looks like a young, a female white woman-ish.
Okay. Just because there's dialect and conversation about how Black culture can get taken by LGBTQIA plus culture and used without the respect or knowledge of what that means. So when we're calling each other Black queens, that being taken and then used in those communities as queen, no matter what your views are, can be questionable. But 9 times out of 10, I'm so refreshed and excited to hear someone call me that, me call them that, when I can tell that that's how they identify. So it can, again, it's a beautiful thing, but the intent has to be there of who is saying it based on what.
Well, precisely, right? And so with that, hopefully we've given you quite the education tonight. Now, Aniko, you had written up a kind of nice little out about today's episode. Do you have that with you? And would you like to share that as we close out?
I don't have it with me, but I just want to say, if this episode has got you thinking and has more questions, talk about it with somebody like you who likes learning and likes having these topics, because that's how we really break those barriers and set up new forms of language with each other.
That's great. Well, that's exactly what I wanted you to say. So thanks for joining us tonight. This is Aniko and Rebecca at Walk the Herd, 93.7 The Ticket. We'll see you next week. All right, perfect.